Hi everyone and welcome to my second to last video in my How to Play the Artist series. Today I'll be going over a tier list of every single map in Dead by Daylight thus far. The information and opinions are based on a combination of tile RNG size, elevation, and overall loop structure. Small and wide maps like Shelter Woods are super fun to get, but massive maps like Mother's Dwelling with a terrible main building and high elevation changes when it comes to patrolling gens make it very difficult to play on. Map balancing is key for a killer like the Artist, but overall there are some maps that I love getting and I hope you enjoy the video. See you at the end. To start off, we have S tier. This tier consists of the best maps in my opinion to get as the Artist. While the maps aren't inherently killer-sided, I think that they're super fun and I see my highest success rate with these maps. The first one we have is Shelter Woods, and this is one of my favorite maps to get. While I don't think it's inherently killer-sided, the wide open plain in the middle and the clear visibility makes it super fun to play on. The tile RNG is great for the Artist and I have a lot of fun with the chases. There can be some issue with W spacing on the outer ring, but overall I absolutely love this map. Next we have Gas Heaven, which is my favorite auto haven map to get for sure. The main building is great for the Artist and it has great gen defense and pressure. Because it's more balanced than jungle gyms, I feel like it's fun to play on and I really enjoy it, though I do feel bad for the survivors sometimes. Finally, we have RPD. Surprisingly, I love RPD and I love when survivors send me there outside of boil-over reasons. The tiles are fantastic and the information you get as killer is next level. Safe pallets are relatively unsaved against an Artist, and because it's easy to memorize, it's a lot easier to predict survivor movements. The only issue is when it's 2 or more survivors at the end and no one is doing a gen, but overall I love being sent to RPD. Next we have A tier. These are the maps that I really like getting. I think that while they're not a brainless win, the tiles on this map are really fun to play on and I usually enjoy the matches that I have here. The only difference between this and S tier is that I feel like there's a higher chance for survivors to do better on these maps, but overall I enjoy the chases and I really like most of these maps. First we have Father Campbell's. This is my preferred map over the 2 Crotus Pen options. Aside from Maurice and the fun carnival area, the tiles are created in a way that is super fun to play on despite there being a nasty jungle gym right next to Killer Shack. The main building can be tricky, and I find that there are shots that are really fun to get as the Artist, but overall, I love playing on this map. Next we have Temple of Purgation. This is the smaller of the Red Forest map offerings, and this is definitely another preference when I see the offering over a map like Mother's Dwelling. The tiles here are super fun, and the smaller size makes it a lot more manageable for an M1 killer. It is full of relatively safe pallets, but I think that it is a welcome challenge in matches. Next we have Torment Creek. Despite being the biggest of the Coldwind maps, I think it's really fun and fair to play on. I think the main building loop is strong and the tiles on this map make for an interesting playstyle. I will agree that the hay dwells and corn can be a bit annoying in-game, but overall I like getting this map. Next we have Suffle Pit. Despite this being a relatively survivor-sided map, I found great success with the Artist, especially on the Killer Shack side. Depending on map RNG, as long as you avoid the middle area, both sides of the map are easy to play on and offer a really fun challenge. It is also a map that is really nice to try and get a 3-gen on. Next we have Wretched Shop. I love getting this map. It is probably one of my favorite auto haven maps and I think it's a lot more fair than the others. It's a manageable size with tiles that are easy to play on and the main building creates a fun loop when survivors break line of sight. Next we have Blood Lodge. It's another auto haven map that I like getting. The lack of crazy elevation makes it easy for diacros on the map and the tiles and pallets are really fun for the Artist. Despite inclusion of things like Fun Bus, it's a really fun map to get. Another auto haven map, we have Wrecker's Yard. As one of the most balanced maps in my opinion, I really like getting this map. It's a great size for an M1 killer and the tiles are fantastic for the Artist. This is definitely a great map to get and I enjoy my matches when I have this. And finally we have Ormond. Ormond has actually grown on me in terms of playability. I was a pig main before the Artist and I used to hate getting this map. Despite the changes in elevation in the main building and some of the loops, I really enjoy the challenge that this map has to offer. However, Ormond and Yamaoka both have these weird jungle gym tiles with a middle window vault and I think that's my least favorite part. In the middle we have B tier. This tier is reserved for neutral maps that can go either way in my opinion. I think a lot of it is RNG and survivor based and the tiles are very mid, but I don't hate going to any of these. First we have Haddonfield, which I have a love-hate relationship with. It's a very well-known survivor-sided map that is in a neutral position because of the rework on its way and the fact that I think the tiles are pretty good for the Artist. If you can get the final gens on the same level as opposed to being on second levels of any of the houses, it can be a really fun game. Next we have Midwich. This is actually one of my favorite maps in the game overall. I think it's visually stunning and the tiles are fun to play on. However, it's a map that it's really easy for the survivors to W on, and if your final gens are all over the map but on different levels, it can be an annoying endgame. Next we have Sanctum of Wrath. This map is interesting in terms of tiles and size. The hills can be difficult and the main section of the map isn't the best for defense, but it's manageable and a great map to 3-gen on. Next we have Beat Plant. While it is God Pallet City, oftentimes the downs on this map are the most satisfying. Most particularly is the tube down in the upper level. The pallets can be annoying and the difference in elevation does mean that you want to take care to make sure the final gens are on the same level, but overall it's a neutral map. Next we have Rotten Fields. This one is on the same level as Shelter Woods with tiles and size, however I get super bad corn vision and because the survivors have a different range of maneuverability, the crows can be difficult to hit. It's by no means the worst map, I just don't prefer it because of the corn. Next we have Thompson House. With the new addition of the top hook, I think that this map is fair in terms of loops and balancing. While the house and hills can be annoying, the tiles are manageable and can be quite fun to chase on. The only downside is the main building is a guaranteed loss, but the size is manageable and I do like it. Next we have Rancid Abattoir. This is one of the more neutral in terms of cold wind maps, and I don't hate getting it, and I definitely prefer it to maps like Cowshed, but the main building can be a pain. It does offer loops and tiles that are fun to play on, but overall it's about mid for me. Next we have Leeries. While it is relatively neutral in terms of balancing, there are god palettes that can make this map a pain. Like Nurse, the line of sight breaking and mind game ability can be the downfall, but the tiles and loops are really fun to play on once the survivor stops holding W. I think it depends on the survivor's playstyle rather than the killer's, but overall it's not terrible to be on. The other of the Yamaoka maps, this map feels more spread out than Sanctum and the tiles are very playable for the artist. However, it does have that weird jungle gym like I mentioned earlier, which I can find to be my most difficult challenge when playing on this map. The main building isn't one of the worst ones, and overall it's not a bad map to get, but I think I would prefer Sanctum of Wrath over Family Estate. Next we have Ironworks. This is one of the more difficult main buildings, and the tiles can be difficult if the RNG is not in your favor. The palettes on this map are relatively easy, but overall I think the rest of it can be pretty rough. I think it depends on how the survivors run it, but you can be pretty successful if you get them into the right areas. And finally, we have Coal Tower. As one of the smallest maps in the game, it is very manageable for an M1 killer. There are interesting tiles in this map that make for fun chases, but there can be difficulties in terms of the main building. I found that the artist does do well in this map, but it depends on RNG and how the survivors play out certain loops. Second to last, we have C tier. This tier is where things start to get difficult and I find my success rates going down. This can be either due to size, the types of main buildings, or the changes in elevations for patrolling gens or in loops. Overall, I don't like the majority of the maps that are in this tier. First we have Disturbed Ward. I hate Disturbed Ward. I throw a mini tantrum every time on stream as we load in because I hate this main building so much. Along with its size, the amount of god palettes and the unfriendly loops on this map make it so difficult to run. The outer tiles are terrible and the palettes are very far and few between in terms of standalone, and it's not a friendly map to get. Next we have Mother's Dwelling. It's another terribly survivor-sided map whose RNG depends on if you're gonna have fun or not. As the biggest map in the game, the elevation differences and the main building are so rough on non-high mobility killer, if the right windows spawn, it can be next to impossible to catch up to a survivor. Depending on how they move and if the survivor is familiar enough with flight paths, it can be very difficult to do well on. Overall, I always lose the coin toss when someone brings Red Forest off rain. I hate Mother's Dwelling. Next we have Cowshed, one of the most survivor-sided maps in this game. The variation in tiles, the main building, and its size generally make it unfun and unfair for killers. With the addition of Corn Vision, I would prefer almost any other cold wind map to this one. Next we have Groaning Storehouse. This main building is one of the grossest in my opinions. The vault variations and the differences in tiles can be very difficult if the survivors know how to run it properly. While it is easy to keep survivors in your line of sight, if you're going for artist hits or downs, it can be very difficult. It's none of the worst, and you can catch up because of its size. It's just not my favorite in terms of Macmillan maps. Next we have Azerov's. I don't know if it's my bad luck, but this is the nastiest Autohaven map in my opinion. This map has a fantastic 3-gen potential, but the middle of the map is so similar to Suffle Pit, it's just a nightmare to run. This is the last Autohaven map I would want to get, and while it is relatively flat, the tiles are really difficult, and I just hate this map. Next we have Pale Rose, one of the 2 swamp maps and somehow the friendlier of the swamp maps. Outside of Swamp Vision from how dark it is, the elevation and weird curvatures can be very difficult to play on. The artist's downfall is elevation on maps, and both swamps are victim of it, especially with the outer lip being so weird. Finally, we have Crows. Despite this being Birdie's map, it's a nightmare to get. With its size and the type of tiles that are on the map, it can be super rough for a non-high mobility killer. The main building is interesting depending on how the survivors loop it, but overall, I don't like getting this map for its size and tiles alone. Lastly, we have D tier. These maps I hate. I want them out of the game, I hate loading in, I hate playing on them, and sometimes I want to AFK in a corner because I'm suffering that much. Please, for the love of God, get rid of these maps. I feel like the game will be so much better for it, but overall, 0 to 10 would recommend. First, we have Grim Pantry. This is almost a GG in my opinion. The differences in elevation make it so difficult you end up N1ing half the time. The main building actually isn't the worst part of it, believe it or not. But outside of it, the hills and the outer lip of the map just make it so terrible for the artist. I hate getting this map. Next we have Dead Dog. This is a personal choice, but I hate Dead Dog with every fiber of my being. The differences in elevation, the fact that it can be very easy for survivors to get gens completed just doesn't bode well. Main building can be incredibly rough and the tiles are difficult to play on. I think if you have to have a dozen breakable doors in a map, it's not fair to play on. Overall, I hate Dead Dog. Finally, the worst maps in this game, Preschool. It is so incredibly survivor-sided, and it is such a malicious map offering to bring. Most M1 killers find themselves suffering at 99% of the tiles. I have run and have been ran for 5 gens just because of the way that every building and every tile links together. I think this is such a nasty map, and the game would be so much better if Preschool just didn't exist. If you've made it to the end of the video, thank you. This tier list is based on the past 3 months of playing the artist nonstop. While I can have matches that I'll do well on in the maps in D tier, I noticed that A and B tier maps are the ones that I consistently do the best on. Thank you for watching my video, and I'll see you in the next one!